Hi again, this is Douglas Lucky Larson. Today we're going to discuss 3 ways to retire literally right now. Now, the premise of this channel is different from the typical early retirement formula. The common retire early plan, like the FIRE movement, is to work for several years like a crazed jackrabbit on Red Bull and then invest every penny so that you can eventually jump off the treadmill and buy some toys, do some travel, and start a hobby. Another common theme today is simply to trade crypto or meme stocks and become insta rich. Well, that's a possibility, but it's not likely. I mean, how many people do you actually know that have done this? I'm not talking about a little success, I'm talking insta rich. It's risky and requires a level of time, knowledge, and investing capital or sheer chance that most people simply don't have. Instead, I believe in a concept of integrating the most important and truly soul satisfying aspects of retirement right now. Maybe when you're still young and healthy enough to enjoy them. Not only is an imminent retirement lifestyle a lot more fun, it's actually the only way to have a truly good life. The word retirement sometimes makes people think of the actual verb retire, as in to lay down and rest. No. Instead, we're talking about financial independence and scheduled freedom. You can work in retirement, I mean, if it's not drudgery and doesn't keep you from doing the other important things you love, right? Also, to be clear, just having fun is not the key to happiness. Instead, the meaningful activities that most people imagine for their golden years must be implemented, right? In your life right now. If you want fulfillment that most of us desire, well, what are uh, what are you going to want in your golden years anyway? I can guarantee you that it's pretty much what you want right now. Enough money for all the basics and freedom to do what you want when you want to do it. However, if you're too old, sick, and lonely in your golden years, well, what's the point of a giant nest egg? Now, I have been accidentally sort of retired most of my adult life. I'm a Gen Xer and I'm in my early 50s, and I've only really worked an 8 to 5 day job for about 10 years of my life. Even when I was a 40 plus hour per week employee, I chose to live in San Diego and Hawaii, enjoying weather and activities on a daily basis that most retirees might dream of. Now, I wish I could say that I planned everything this way from the start, but actually, I'm kind of a surf bum, and I just paddled with the ocean currents most of the time. They say it's often better to be lucky than smart, and I think that describes me pretty well. My high school teachers, I think they'd likely agree. The trick is that with some intention, planning, and a whole lot of just guts, most people can actually create their own luck. You can retire early and often starting now. I will show you how others have done it without winning lotto or inheriting millions from great Aunt Betsy. You can actually do this. How bad do you want it? The following success stories are not necessarily people who've figured everything out perfectly. These are ordinary people who are headed in the right direction. They're enjoying a great lifestyle. Even though they are not necessarily millionaires, they have chosen to retire early and often, and the future looks bright. Now, if only we can just avoid a zombie apocalypse. Well, in the next slide, let me explain that I like to follow several people who have downsized to a tiny house or van or motorhome and become lifestyle vloggers to bring others on their journey. They have successful channels on YouTube, and their channel revenue, sponsorships, and endorsements have made them enough money to get by uh, because they have a smaller monthly budget. Some have actually gotten pretty darn rich. Now, I started following some of the channels of some of these successful tiny home dwellers about 7 years ago when I wanted to build my own little off-grid mini cabin on a couple acres of land that I bought on a stream about 90 minutes from my home. I just wanted to make a weekend getaway, a little cabin on a small budget, and I did. And I wrote a book about it. That guy right there. Maybe I'll post a link in the show notes, so if you want to see it on Amazon, you can. However, the tiny home full-time lifestyle is very different than my, weekend enjoyment kind of approach. It's fascinating though. I learned so much from several YouTubers, and they have huge followings of people. People like me who want to hear about their frustrations and successes, best practices. I mean, some talk about the process itself and the best use for a tiny home, the best ways to outfit it in every way, the construction, living off the grid, finding the next location to park their tiny house on wheels. Others talk more about gardening and homesteading in a more permanent tiny house, like a tiny house farm. Now let's see the next slide. Another thing that I saw that I really liked, and this was in the early part of 2020, during the COVID craziness, I decided that I wanted to build out a Sprinter van and do some weekend adventuring with my family this way, instead of just to my tiny cabin that we saw on the last page. Now, especially when the world was locked down, we couldn't go to some of the places that we always enjoy. I love Hawaii and visiting back there. I now live in Utah, and there's a lot of great places in Utah. If you're an outdoors person, you like the four seasons, man, Utah, Colorado, hard to beat. But I do love the beach. I like to get to Florida, and I like to get to the Caribbean, do some scuba diving. But when the world was locked down, I thought, you know what, I'm going to get me one of these vans. I see people doing this crazy van life stuff, and you know what? I just want to build my own. So I followed some van lifer YouTubers who documented the best ways to build a van and travel the USA and even the world in a homemade mini motorhome, if you will, an adventure wagon. Again, fascinating. And they obviously have the followers to prove it. We'll look at that on the next page. I'm not the only one who likes the idea and the entertainment value. I built my own van over the space of about 4 months, and we used it a lot for family fun during this COVID plandemic time period. But with a family of five, I got 3 kids, I gotta say that I'm not likely to live full-time in a van, RV, or a tiny home. Now, if you are serious about an imminent retirement, though, you're ready to radically retire, well, guess what? You can actually go tiny in a van or RV or tiny house. Then, you can actually reduce your budget by half, even 75%. And you can imagine, you don't need much income if your total monthly expenses are, say, $1,000 or maybe $1,500. If you sell a house or some cars and all your unneeded stuff, you could fund 6 months or a couple years in a tiny house or in your van life. And then eventually your revenue from your lifestyle vlog should be enough to sustain you. On this next slide, we can see that some of the tiny lifers, man, they can incorporate all kinds of different lifestyle things, mommy lifestyle, travel hack lifestyles, or finding cool free stuff lifestyles into their channel and create their own tribe of fanatic followers. If you look at some of these thumbnails really closely, and we'll kind of zoom in here, you can see some of these guys have millions of views for each video. Crazy. These people have fun, adventurous lives, and they get paid well to do it. If you've got thousands of subscribers and millions of views, let me tell you, you can make $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 per month. Wow, just from, again, your YouTube ad revenue and then endorsements. Is it right for you? Well, it's worked great for many others. My favorite thing about this is that going small you can more easily focus on the things that matter, relationships, and um, your purpose in life, not material things. Now, on this next slide, let's talk about some people I actually know that take advantage of the gig economy and use income and locational arbitrage. Sometimes they're called digital nomads or workplace flexible. Uh, Basically, they get paid in American wages or Canadian or Western or European or whatever. It might be Japanese yen, but they live much cheaper in other places around the world. So their dollars or euros or British pounds or yen go much further. Now, my nephew in law and his wife and two kids have literally lived all over the world during the last several years. Places like Costa Rica, Greece, Hungary, Japan, Thailand, and many other spots in the world. He is a freelance programmer and makes decent money, but it wouldn't really go far in LA or New York. Sometimes they stay in Florida, say, during the off season, in a nice Airbnb. I've seen the photos. Then they move to an Eastern European country or maybe South America when tourists crowd into the popular vacation spots in the US. Now, COVID lockdowns and travel restrictions have limited their travel options in the last 18 months, but when your kids are homeschooled and your American paychecks are deposited digitally, you can live wherever makes sense. Now, my older brother is uh, he's in his mid 50s and he has a nice home. But because of COVID, he started working remotely and then went freelance as a systems analyst. Now, he and his wife spend more time in Southern California and rural Washington state than at home. COVID has been a bad thing on many levels, especially the governmental overreaction to COVID. But the digital nomad lifestyle has actually benefited. More employers have embraced the idea, and workers can really increase their freedom. Anything that can be done digitally can easily become a part of a retire early and often lifestyle. Think of these: photographer, graphic artist, bookkeeper, web developer, content writer, virtual assistant, accountant, digital marketer, not to mention the lifestyle and influencer vlogging that we talked about with the tiny house and van living. Your options are only limited by your imagination. Again, the people that I know that have embraced this life are able to focus on family relationships and experiences, not accumulating stuff. And which do you think will really make you happy? On the next page, let's discuss some other people that I actually know. Brian and Julia, they're neighbors of mine for 13 years, and this up in the upper corner here, this is not really them. I just found this random Google picture, but the house that's behind them, it actually looks a lot like their house. Anyway, after four kids all moved up and out of the house, they found themselves empty nesters. This was a few years back. Brent had been let go from a good job making 100K plus, and Julia still worked as a teacher and loved it. Now, Brian and Julia discussed several options, including downsizing and moving to a smaller place, but they came up with a different plan. They had a finished basement and decided to simply downsize to their downstairs. Then they rented out the two-story upstairs home for $1,700 per month. And let me tell you, it's up from that now. Now we're in, almost 2022. Man, I'm sure they're getting about $2,300-$2,400 a month. Now, the home was paid off, so the new income for them was all positive cash flow. Brian decided to run for a local government office, and he won. He loved serving his community part-time and has stayed in the office for two more elections. Now, the hours required are much less than a full-time job, and they offer other great perks in the community. They have a debt-free, modest car. In fact, I'm pretty sure they've got two cars that are both paid off, and they have a few $100,000 in savings and index funds. They have cash flow from the upstairs rent as well as the untouched equity, about 700K, in their home. They do not do extravagant vacations. I know them. And they're often gone, though, especially in the summer and winter breaks, but visiting kids and grandkids. They volunteer many hours each month at their local church. They have adequate health care benefits and an indefinitely sustainable lifestyle without needing to touch their principal investments or home equity. Now, they're not truly retired from all work, but they have some amazing retire early lifestyle components, and they really like their low stress, highly engaged life. There are many ways to use a home as the leverage point to retire early and often. Let's take a look at the next slide for another example of this. When I lived on the island of Maui, this was one of my homes, this guy up here. I actually had 5 different houses while I was there. Not all of them at once, but this one here was kind of a cool, unique property. I lived almost free in this house because I had 2 attached rentable units and a housemate in my part of the house. Now, these 3 different renters all had their own private spaces, and so did I, but they paid my mortgage. Everybody else I knew on Maui was always complaining about the high cost of rent and impossible housing prices. But my house in Pukalani was actually the key to living cheap and having more time to enjoy the sun, sand, and waves. Sure, I had a day job, but every day, every hour that you're not working on Maui is like a little vacation on Maui. I have other friends who rent their own home on Airbnb for the summer, and each year they travel. So, in talking with them, the nightly rental income is much higher than their costs of, 2 and 3 month vacations. Now, is there some way that you could leverage your home to buy back some of your life? This is house hacking, and it's not a new idea, but with VRBO, Airbnb, HomeAway, and other platforms, not to mention the traditional leasing, the new digital world with rental advertising platforms and automatic payment systems, it makes your home an easy springboard to retire early and often. Now, on the last slide, we're going to summarize everything we've talked about this far. I promised you 3 radical but real ways to start an early retirement now. Now, first, I showed you some tiny house and van life vlogger possibilities. Second, we talked about becoming a location-optional digital nomad. And finally, number 3, we talked about the house hacking and leveraging that the home you have might be able to give you if you want to use it that way. Now, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you comment below, I will try to answer any specific questions that you might have. I'll also make more videos on these similar ideas. I actually know people who have combined a couple of these strategies and become very successful and totally financially free. Now, I hope to see you on the next video.